Let's try that again, Pika. Yeah, are you sure you're not touching buttons? I'm not entirely positive that's the case here. Let's try this. Check, check. The wily walrus with the waitress and her waxed lips. Well, there's walrus a boot. Oh, oh my goodness. Yeah, we have a horror movie about a walrus. We've come this far. Thank you, everyone. Let me put on the main menu thing. See, we have Wallace with his mustache. Wallace lives in the United States of America. He takes a trip to the Great White North of Canada, somewhere in northern Manitoba, where in this secluded house, this old man has promised him some content for his podcast, wherein this old man is actually a serial killer, drugs Wallace, and tortures him and disfigures him into his mad fantasy of making a walrus person. He wants to make a man into a walrus to recreate what might or may not be a complete fantasy that he was washed. Howard Howe, the old man, as a young person, was washed up on the beach and saved by Mr. Tusk. This is true. And that's the story in a way. Welcome to the 31 Days of Halloween. Every day in October, we are doing a different horror movie. And where I love horror movies. I love good films. I like bad films. I like sci-fi. I love certain kind of horror movies. Like I avoid really cruel, hopeless stuff with too many garish, elaborate, hopeless like Eli Roth's Hostel movies. No thanks. Just go. You need to watch that by yourself or somebody else. Not me. I like slasher movies. I like supernatural horror. I like monster movies. I like vampire movies. And we are doing a mini series within this part of the program in our series. We are focusing on body horror. We've been doing this for a few days now. We started off with 70s and 80s slasher films, specifically with a focus on Friday the 13th and the killer Jason Voorhees, A Nightmare on Elm Street, and the Frederick Krueger of the killer of Elm Street. Freddy Krueger, yeah. Frederick. We also dipped a little into Michael Myers with the original 1978 through 1982, the first three Halloween movies, and the third one had nothing to do with Michael Myers. And it's oddly my favorite. And we did a couple of other slasher movies. We did the 2009 slasher lovers movie, The Hills Run Red. We also did Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original from 1974 by Tobe Hooper, one of the two big starting guns of the slasher film subgenre of horror films. Indeed. And those like little these cutouts. This a really interest. I like that because what I was able just to tell the story right there a bit to you. I got to give you some proper setup. What the hell is Tusk about, and why does it matter? I love horror. Okay, so we were saying before I was distracted by my BBC British program director and talking in my stodgy voice, my stodgy BBC interview voice. I got that from like a 1967 clip of a stodgy BBC interviewer talking to Pink Floyd. And the Pink Floyd, why does it have to be so loud? Great. So we veered away from slasher movies and into body horror. Body horror, grotesque, mutations, augmentizations, cybernetics, supernatural influence, non-consensual modifications of the human body. That's today's episode of body horror. Grotesque special effects. This has it. This is a really good film. Now, I just need to let's talk about movies. This is where this is about horror movies, but also let's talk about movies for a moment because I love movies, and I'm only a couple of years younger than him. So, like Kevin Smith was one of the auteurs of the 90s for me growing up. See, the 1990s had a few big directors come of age and start, just we got to know these, like, the Pauls Anderson. Uh, there's two of them. That's a plural. Would it be Paul Andersons? I think it would be Paul Andersons. Because I like it, but the Pauls Anderson, I've never heard that. That would make a great band name. But Kevin Smith, who sold his comic book collection to fund his movie, and which was Clerks. Here we talk. This is from the shelves of my living room, where it looks like a video store. I love Kevin Smith movies. There's Clerks. Is this a 3-pack? Yeah, Clerks, Chasing Amy, and Jane Silent Bob and Jane Silent Bob Strike Back. Wow. I mean, Mallrats. Love that movie. Dogma. This is hard to find, and this DVD copy does the transfer no justice. It looks terrible, but I watch it for the movie. I love it. Clerks 2. Jane Silent Bob reboot. Oh, we saw their live show. This was like one of the last big things to do pre-lockdown. That was a night out for my birthday. He came to town in November, and we watched the movie and saw the Q&A. That was nice. I got to finally see Kevin Smith live. I always wanted to. And to close out the Askew verse, unless they go back there again, is Clerks 3, The Bittersweet. Oh boy, I might not watch that again. I don't think it's got rewatchability like as the other movies do. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the good things about Smith movies. They're really rewatchable. They're fun, well paced. He does his own editing most of the time, and he's just a movie maker. I like that. He's one of my contemporaries, a peer age wise, and I really dig his stuff. Also, I got Jersey Girl, the original Jersey Girl, yeah, and Zack and Miri Make a Porno. Two of these movies, they are not anything to do with each other or the Askewverse. This here, the Askewverse, I don't have Cop Out, which was made in 2010, which was a Hollywood movie, and it was a buddy comedy with, I think, oh my gosh, is it Tracy Morgan and Bruce Willis, and it's a buddy cop movie. Yeah, and I'd never seen that. Let me know in the comments section if you've seen it and you like it. But I've seen Red State, Kevin's other horror movie, his first horror movie. I don't like Red State. It's my least favorite Kevin Smith movie. I don't like it very much, and some of it has to do with the absolute cruelty of and one specific scene, one specific gruesome execution scene turned me off to it. Like, they wrap this person up in saran wrap, and as he's smothering, they take a gun, a GUN, and pull the trigger, and then drop them into some kind of weird. It was really, it was really hard to watch that movie. Maybe I don't understand it very well. I don't know, but Red State, I dislike. I dislike as a movie. I'm not like I just don't like it. I dislike it. But as you can see, at least Clerks 3 wasn't as bad as Red State, but I'm a huge Kevin Smith fan. But let's get into Clerks. We're going to talk about this came because Kevin Smith was, he came from the land of podcasts. He kind of invented the whole, the interactive fandom part. A big part of fandom being a big thing, what it is today is, Kevin Smith, had his finger over the pulse of that culture. He was like, he gets a lot of a hard time I'm gonna put the Making of Tusk on. Oh look, oh it has some stuff. Here. Main story. It's got Haley Joel Osment, and it's got oh maybe I should just go back. Haley Joel Osment. It's got Justin Long. He plays Teddy. So Justin Long is the dark-haired guy with the mustache. They're best friends. They have a podcast which they talk about outrageous things. And one of the things is it's like about human calamity and making the thing is one friend making so Wallace making his best friend Teddy laugh uncontrollably at stories of human calamity and stuff, right off the internet. And that's their podcast, and they've made it big time. I mean, they've got lots of subscribers, lots of followers. They're making a decent living off of this thing. So it's meta referential to Smith himself and the culture that brought this movie about. This is a horror movie. It's body horror. It's not, and it's a psychological thriller too. Very kind of Hitchcock-esque, I gotta say. It might be Smith's most Hitchcock film. And then there's this beautiful flashback scene in black and white about Howard Howe's the sinking of the Anastasia, and I think that's what. And it's just and it's shot in black and white in a smaller perspective ratio. I think in 16 millimeter, and it looks just like Clerks did. And I really liked that as a callback. I thought that was very interesting. I appreciated that as being a fan of the body of his work. We had a 101-minute runtime, so just over an hour and a half, which is fine. It's a good runtime. I mean, it was actually pretty tight for movies that had scenes of dialogue between two actors that had its own pacing and had its own vibe. And this, like, watching these actors chew scenery and dialogue off of each other. The elder statesman Michael Parks, when he's in a room with either Justin Long or the brilliant uncredited cameo by Johnny Depp as the detective Guy Lapointe of the Sûreté of Quebec, and it's a movie set in Canada. And so it's about the celebration of Canadian culture. What's that all about, you might say? But it's really, I have a fondness for Canada. I love Canada. I'm from Massachusetts. I love hockey. I love Canadian girls. I love Canadian girls that say the word "aboot." Canadian girls want to grow up. Most want to grow up to become hockey moms. And that's all right with me. You look at something like the TV show Smallville, the Superboy story. We used to call that the Canadian Cat Fight Club. We just love that, no, that's not objectification. This is just big digging Canadian chicks. I love Canadian girls. Dun dun dun. Yes. Back to action, as the Power Rangers would say. Also, there's the girlfriend, played by Genesis Rodriguez. It's this beautiful, beautiful actress named Genesis Rodriguez. Her name's Allie in this movie, and she plays this very human role. It's very touching, very loving, but very human and very real. And she was on Entourage a little bit. She's done a lot of Telemundo stuff, and it doesn't look like she's done anything very much recently. Yeah. A lot of Spanish television too. Where's she from? Did she say it was from Ecuador? No, she's from Miami. And her mom was a Cubana, a model, and her dad is Venezuelan, and needs an actor and a singer. Oh, cool. And but yeah, beautiful actress, and just like really nails her parts, and very emotive, and just it's a great little ensemble cast. It's about 5 actors, and then the 2 kids, the clerks. There are clerks in a Canadian the stop and go of Canada. It's called A to Z, because they don't say Z, they say Z. You know, that's one of the little Canadian things. What's that all about? I love Canada. And they got Tim Hortons donuts. You can get soup served in a bread bowl, like cream of mushroom soup. I'm getting myself hungry. You don't get that around here. There was a Tim Hortons across the street from the Boston Garden where the Bruins play. I think maybe that had more to do with, you know, maybe a hockey player like wanting to own something. So you know, or I don't know. I have no idea. But it's come and gone. But they did not have soup in a bread bowl. I only experienced that in the great, the true North. What's it called? The True North Trilogy. This is supposed to be something called the True North Trilogy. Oh yeah, but the Clerks, played by the daughters of Johnny Depp and Kevin Smith himself, Harley Quinn Smith and Lily Rose Depp, and they actually got their own movie out of this. They got a sideways sequel, which is so funny because that's a movie. That's a Kevin Smith movie I need to get. Is Yoga Hosers, which is a funny slapstick, farcical. There's someone backing up, and no, that's just not Pika trying to censor, you know, the show again in my language. But apparently, this Tusk is the first in Smith's planned True North trilogy. This was followed by Yoga Hosers, and the upcoming Moose Jaws in 2024. And Moose Jaws is basically Jaws with a moose. Indeed. And Harley Quinn and Lily Rose will reprise their roles from Yoga Hosers. Yoga Hosers came out in 2016. Wow, 7 years ago. Wow. Tusk came out in 2014. It was made for a budget of $3 million, and its box office was $1.9 million. It is a flop. And it's barely generated any kind of cult curiosities. Let's just go to filming take. Filmmaking. There's a baseball field near my house. And there are people outside on this beautiful late October day. The air is crisp and sunny and it's beautiful. And Smith, way before his heart attack. There's like before heart attack Smith and there's after heart attack Smith. And let's get back to the horror movie. Why don't we? It's a horror movie where Wallace gets abducted by this crazy old man who ends up being a serial killer who is recreating the golden age of his life when he was stranded on an island and befriended by a walrus. And that he actually had to fight the walrus and kill the walrus. And that... but there comes the grotesque part. He's drugged Wallace, kept him captive, kind of like Misery as well. You know, if Rob Reiner's Misery, we covered that last year, but it's also the famous Stephen King captivity horror book. And then you have a really good B story with the friends trying to rally to save him. Little did they know that they're sleeping together, Teddy and Allie. And because like, you know, Wallace goes on the road a lot, and you know, he just has his indiscretions, but Teddy and Lily truly, you know, they've been seeing each other behind his back. It was a really good B story, but they're diligent and still they don't give up on him, and they ultimately find him in the end, and that's at the end of the movie where we see the completion of Howard Howe's task. He's transformed Wallace into... He's transformed Wallace into a walrus. And there's like this... It's a rubber suit that they put on the actor, but it's meant to simulate human skin. And the whole Buffalo Bill flaying, making. So there's a walrus suit that's. You can still see faces on the patches, and they remove. So I shouldn't even get into the body horror stuff. It's just real, but it's just one victim. Well, actually, there are actually stories of the remains of of Howe's past victims, and then we actually see a failed prototype in the bottom of the pool. Yeah, it was part of Howe's part of Wallace's initiation into being to losing his humanity and becoming a walrus and embracing is learning how to swim. So Howe drags the now the helpless, confused, abused, traumatized, horrified, victimized Wallace into the pool where Wallace sees another walrus like him, but a human skeleton in the holes in the skin and that failed skin suit. It's just really grotesque. Grotesque is it's you know what grotesque actually means. I love words. Grotesque by definition. Comically or repulsively ugly or distorted. And but it's also hideous. And it's an embellished horror. It's not just plain old human horror. It's done for effect, and it's done to show and display and to horrify. Yeah, grotesque. The idea of this film was funny because of the podcasters in the movie, Kevin Smith being part of being at the forefront of podcast culture, which kind of led into this whole YouTube culture as well. Kevin Smith is one of the granddaddies of this. I can see that. I don't have to dislike his work or like that work to, know that. So the idea came through a podcast. It's called the Smodcast, and it's something that Kevin Smith did. And you have subscribers and you have followers and listeners. With his friend Scott Mosier, the producer, he's been there from day one. He usually plays Rick Derris, and he played Rick Derris in Clerks. He's been there. So Mosier's been part of this, behind. He's on a production level from the beginning. But it was Smodcast 259, and Smith told his Twitter followers to tweet hashtag Walrus yes or hashtag Walrus no. After this freeform conversation about the walrus and the carpenter, and it began as he discussed an article. Mosher discussed an article featuring a Gumtree ad. A Gumtree ad is a British-based online classified advertisement and community website. You know what I mean? Where a homeowner was offering a living situation free of charge if the lodger agrees to dress as a walrus. The discussion went on from there, resulting in almost an hour of the episode being spent on reconstruction and telling a hypothetical story based on the ad. And then Smith went to Twitter with his walrus yes, walrus no thing. We'll get back to that. And then came this misunderstood masterpiece. It's got great music. It's got great use of popular music. They were able to get the rights to Tusk by Fleetwood Mac, and for the big fight between Wallace, now the Walrus, in Act 3, and he has to fight Howard Howe, who wants to go out dying after this life. And wow, really interesting. And yeah, it was. Filming began in 2013, September 2013, a decade ago, and they wrapped on November 22nd, 2013. And it was just what in a gem of a movie, but what a horrific horror movie. It begs questions. Is Wallace still a person? It's got a great ending. It ends on a 1 year later note with some closure for the characters. Our three, our main three, and and because closure is not just an emotional thing. Closure is actually a cinematographic thing, a cinematic thing, a film theory thing. Closing. You have to give the movie the emotional value it needs for the for the. It's part of denouement, and it's part of the fade to black, and it's part of credits rolling, and the score. There's part of it. It's part of like I'm a credits reader, so I'm one of those people, right? But Kevin Smith's Tusk, it's it's horrifying. It's kind of a slow burn. It's gruesome. It's grotesque. It may upset you. The acting in this is just so spot on and wonderful. It's a delight. It really is somewhere. It's Kevin Smith somewhere between Scorsese and Hitchcock. Letting actors act in beautifully lit rooms with a great framed shot, and having this wonderful opportunity to film these actors at this specific, stage of their careers. I mean, yeah, and thank you so very much for coming with me on this mini voyage into body horror. Um, Makeup, special effects, music, tension, camera work, lighting. It all adds up into movie magic. Yeah, and this movie has movie magic. This movie is probably flown under your radar. Don't let it. If you're a horror fan or even a Kevin Smith fan, and I know that a lot of people on my side of like the fandom gave him a lot of grief, and there's a lot of blocked Twitter accounts because of He-Man, and I'm not a He-Man fan like that. I was there at the beginning, but I'm not just I realize that there's a pre-heart attack Smith and there's a post-heart attack Smith, and that pre-heart attack Smith would made ribald, dirty jokes, would say awful things, and make movies such as Clerks 2 and Tusk and even Red State. That really pushed boundaries of taste. A lot of it came down to do with something he himself coins in his own Chasing Amy. We write books for overweight and underweight guys who can't get laid. That kind of sense of humor. And now if we can take the essence of that and apply that to all fans, we don't have to look at it as just guys or any kind of body size or anything. But I think the whole not getting laid part is universal. He wasn't. He was not in this movie. Not. I don't. Is he in a? He's not in a cameo, is he? I looked away a lot, I guess, because I was watching this movie with the commentary track, which is great because this little DVD, you know what I mean? It's not a Blu-ray and it's not a 4K and it's not a special edition. This is just the normal version of this DVD, and it's just packed with great movie stuff, and that's just par for the course, with an auteur like Kevin Smith. This is Michael Parks as the crazy old man. And there's Justin Long. There's the doomed Wallace. And it's just. Then comes Johnny Depp doing this French Canadian accent, which would be problematic today because he's a no, it's because he lived in France for decades. His wife was Vanessa Paradis. His daughter's French. His son's French. He could do a French accent. He could do a Quebecois accent. It's pretty funny because it's Johnny Depp doing Peter Sellers' Clouseau through a French Canadian lens, and I really appreciate humor. And it was it added a comedic element to it, and then plus the absurdity, the sheer absurdity of what we see as the result of Howard Howe's actions. The transformed Wallace, the walrus. I mean, it's grotesque. It's horrible, but it's a good movie. I like this movie. I stand by it. And I hope you get a chance to make it one of your horror movies during the 31 days of October, the 31 days of horror, the 31-day horror challenge, Shocktober, however you describe it. You're welcome here. You're part of it. What are you watching this year? Let me know in the comment section. And feel free to like and subscribe and turn on those notifications. The month is winding up. We've got 3 more movies to go as we enter our movies seen through a feminist lens, horror. In a way, I'm not a feminist, and I'm not going to claim to be one. You'd be pretty darn blind to, or myopic, to not acknowledge and respect that lens. And the following movies, 1974's Black Christmas, Hereditary, and Midsommar, both by Ari Aster. Let's get to it. And thank you so very much. Tune in, and don't be afraid to save me that seat next to you in that dark movie theater.